So now that we have our multiple state lower third, the next thing we want to do is start adding additional elements to this master scene. So I'm going to go ahead and open our master scene. We're all done with this lower third group, so I'm just going to close this off. Next thing we may want to do is add something such as a time, so that if you want to bring the time in and out, we can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a new group inside of my main group, and I'm going to call this one time group. And again, I like to put everything else inside another group that I design in, so I'm just going to make another group here called design, and I'm going to throw my elements into here. I'm going to go into my built-ins, into my primitives, and we're going to use a Nagi again. So I'm just going to slide a Nagi down here, and we'll set it kind of as the same height as before. We used 25, and I'm just going to adjust my bevel here down to on each corner to 0 and set my stretch to 25. So I'm just going to rewind my time a little bit, and it kind of helps with placement here. So I'm going to go ahead and place an image on my time as well. So I can use this blue image or a gray image. You can use whatever you want. I'm just going to go use that blue, and I'm going to reposition my time here. So I'm just going to adjust the X and the Y position here to kind of line it up with the other one. The mapping, not such a big deal. You can use whatever you want. Again, I'm just going to set mine to vertex. So here in the position, it's close enough. And I'm just going to align it to my gray lower third here. From here, I can begin animating. So I want it to end up right there. So I'm just going to set my timeline here to 30. And I'm going to set a keyframe. So I hit set key. I'm going to rewind my timeline to 0. And I want this time element to come in from the right side. So I'm just going to adjust my X position here till it's off the screen. And I'm going to hit set key. So it created this little animation here. I'm going to click on this animation. It takes me right into the stage. Now what I need to do is create a new director. So I'm going to drag a new director or click on the D button here, and it will also add a director. I'm going to right click on this new director I added, and I'm going to rename it. So I'm just going to call it time. Again, click on my animation here, and it highlights this Nagi. So I'm just going to drag this Nagi element or this Nagi animation into my time director. If you want to rename this, we can. So we'll just call this time box, and that will allow us to identify it a little bit easier here in the stage. If you need to adjust your timing, go ahead. So I'm just going to leave it at 0.5 seconds. I'm going to highlight my time director, adjust my timeline here at 0, and I'm going to hit add stop. Once I add that stop point, I'm going to click on it to rename it. So I'm going to click on the name and type in O since it's in the out state. I'm going to advance my timeline to the next keyframe. Click on add stop again. And this time I'm just going to name it A again. We're only going to do one state with this time, so this should pretty much be set for us now in the stage. The other thing I need to do is, again, add the toggle group. So the toggle group needs to be called the exact same thing as the director. So I'm going to drag a new group into my time group, and I'm going to name this group time. Then I'm going to go back into my built-ins, into my plugins, and we're going to drag this toggle plugin onto our time group. I'm going to click on the toggle, and I'm going to hit default keyframes. Once it adds that animation, we should be all set. So now what I'm going to do is take a snapshot of this scene so we can save it, and it'll help us placement of our time. So I'm going to hit snap, and I'm just going to call this one time. I'm going to save this master scene. We're going to go back and create a call-up scene for this time. So I'm into my server here in my S tab, and I'm going to hit create new scene. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call this one time, and I hit OK. Now I'm going to double click to open this scene. First thing I want to do is grab my snapshot of my time and drag it into the background image. I'm going to add a group into the scene tree here. And now I'm going to add a font. So I can use whatever font I want. I'll use the same font as the lower third. So I'm just going to slide this as a sub-container of the group. First thing I'm going to do is click on the transformation editor. I'm going to set my Z position to 1. Then I'm just going to scale this down to whatever size I want and kind of reposition it so it's over our box. Now I want this to be time, so we can do this a couple of ways. In our tools folder, I'm just going to use our system time. So I'm going to drag the system time down onto our font, and that turns it into a clock. If I click on my system time in the editor here, I don't want the seconds, so I'm going to take that off. And I may want to add an AM or a PM, so we just need to find the combination here for that. So I'm going to type in small p, and I want to change my hours from 24-hour clock to a 12-hour clock. So I'm just going to type in small I. Then I'm just going to reposition this again. If I need to scale this down a little bit, it looks like. Put it right over here on the right hand side, and it's close enough. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my background image off, and if I want to change this background color again to let us identify that this is a call-up scene, I'm going to go ahead and hit save, and this should be all set to go. We're going to hold off to test it, and we're going to go ahead back into the master scene and add another element here. So I'm going to double click on the master scene, and this time we want to add a logo or something. So I'm going to go ahead and add another group here. I'm going to call this one logo group. Again, I like to throw all my design elements in another group and keep them separate, so I'm going to call this group design. I'm just going to advance my timeline out here, and now that we have multiple directors, we need to be careful because whatever we were working in the stage, that's what it's selected to. So I'm just going to select my L3rd to advance it out so that I can line up my logo group. I'm going to add another Nagi here. So I'm going to go into my built-ins, into my primitives, drag in Nagi down into my design group, and we'll set the variables here. Again, the height, I want 25. My bevel, I'm going to take down to 0 on every corner. And I'm going to set the stretch to 25 as well. I can place whatever image I want on it. I can use the blue or the gray. I'll use the gray. And again, mapping, we can set to whatever we want. I'll just set mine to vertex again. Now I'm just going to reposition this Nagi to where it kind of aligns with the other one. So this looks close enough. Now I can worry about my animation. So again, I'm just going to keep this one simple. We're going to have one state. It's going to come in from the right side and land where it is right now. So I'm going to set my timeline here to 30. I'm going to hit set key. Then I'm going to rewind my timeline to 0 and have my position adjusted to the right and hit set key. It adds this little animation here. Now you can see the animation got added into our L3 director. So we want to add a new director here for our logo. And I'm going to add a new director by clicking and dragging this. So I drag in new director down here. I right click on it. I hit rename, and I'm going to type in logo. I'm going to take my animation or my Nagi here and drag this into my logo. And if I want to rename this again, I can call this logo box, and that helps us identify it. So now that we have the director set up, we need to set our stop points. Same process as before. I'm going to highlight my director, adjust my timeline to 0, click add stop. My first stop point, it's in the out state or out position. So I'm going to name this stop point capital O. I'm going to advance my timeline to where it's in. I'm going to add my stop point right there. I'm going to click on that stop point. I'm going to name this one A. So once we have this set up, we're all set to add the toggle group. I'm going to add another group right down here. I'm going to name this the exact same thing as that director. I'm going to double click on the group and call it logo. I'm going to go back into my built-ins, into my plugins tab, into the container folder, drag the toggle down onto it, click on the toggle, and hit default keyframes. It should add our little animation, and if we want to check in the stage to see if it added our AX and BX containers, we can do that as well. And here you can see that it did that. So we're ready to save this. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And before we start our call-up scene, I'm just going to take a snapshot of this as well so that we'll be able to place our logo somewhere. So here I'm going to take a snap. I'm just going to call this snapshot logo. Again, just make sure I save it. And then we'll go back into our S tab, and we're going to create a new scene. This time I'm going to call this scene logo. I'm going to go ahead, double click it to open it. And again, I'm going to go into my scene settings, grab my snapshot, and place it in the background image. I'm going to go ahead and add a group. This time it's a little bit different from our text in that we're using a logo. So I may want to use something here to kind of constrain our logo. And I'm just going to use another Nagi here and set it as the same variables as before. Set the height to 25, adjust our bevels here to 0, set our stretch to 25, And I'm just going to kind of place this right over our logo Nagi in the background scene. So I'm going to use something like this. Now I have a logo here that has an alpha channel, so when I drag this down, we won't actually see this Nagi because the image has an alpha channel. And it doesn't matter so much about the stretch, so I could actually just kind of reset that to 0 there, or adjust the height here or the width to kind of adjust the variable. And I can come into my logo here and scale this down as well so that it will fit. And you can see that we have little edges here. So again, we just may want to adjust our width of this, and this will kind of constrain it. So however you want to set the mapping here to linear or vertex, if it's on linear, we just kind of want to make sure all of our logos are the exact same size when we import them into Viz and need to swap them out. This time we want to use a image control, so I'm going to go into my control folder and use the control image to be able to swap this logo out. So I'm going to drag this control image on here. I click on here. Here's the field identifier. We can leave it as 1. If we want to give it a description, it's fine. We can call this logo or something. If not, we can just leave it as is. Click on the object controller here. I'm going to turn on my transition logic. Again, this is the master scene. Our state identifier is A. Our layer identifier, or our director or toggle, is called logo. Now I also want to adjust the Z position, so I'm going to go back into my transformation editor and put the Z position up 1 or 2 for this logo. Before I save it, I'm just going to go into my scene settings and turn the background image from active off. And if I want to adjust this scene setting colors again, I can, and I can just hit save, and we would be ready to test it. Now one thing I want to check within the time is if I'm going to reopen this, even though we don't need to change this setting here, we don't need a control text or anything on it. Time is just by itself. So we never set a control plugin on here, but we still need to use this object. So I'm going to go into my object here, click on it, and set up our transition logic. So I'm going to turn my transition logic on. Our background scene was master. Our state identifier was A. Our layer identifier was called time. So I can go ahead and save that and just make sure that your Z position is set to 1 or 2. So let's go back into our master scene, and we're going to add one more element here to this lower third. This time we want to maybe add something such as a topic group. So I'm just going to add another group here and call this topic group. And again, I'm going to add another container within here. I'm going to call this one design. And I'm going to again use a Nagi to add something to the left side here. So I'm going to drag a Nagi down, go into the Nagi editor, and I'm going to set the height here to 50 and adjust each bevel down to 0. And I'll set the stretch to 25. I'm going to reposition this to the left side and down. Maybe we'll make the width a little bit smaller, and we'll reposition again. So I'm going to add some type of design element to this. It could be any type of picture. I'm just going to use this picture of a lens here. I'm going to drag this down onto it. Click on the image to go into the mapping parameters. Maybe I'll just scale this up a little bit. And if I want to add a material on here at 2, I can. So I'm going to create a new material. I'm just going to call this one green. And we're going to create a green material. So I'll just click on here. This is close enough. I'll hit save and close. Put this green material right on this Nagi. So again, now I can concentrate on the animation for this one, and I'm going to keep it simple again. I'm going to have it come in from the left side and just land right where it is. So at 30, I want it to land exactly where it is. I'm going to hit set key. I'm going to rewind my timeline to 0, and I'm going to move my topic Nagi off to the left side here and hit set key again. Created an animation, so I'm going to click on this animation. Let's first rename this. We'll just call this topic box. I'm going to add a new director. So I'm going to slide this director down here. I'm going to right click to rename this director. We'll call this one topic. So I'll click on my animation here, and it takes us right to this topic box. I'm going to slide my topic box animation into my topic director. Again, now I'm ready to set my stop points. So I'm going to adjust my timeline to 0, click on my topic director, and click add stop. Since this is the out state, I'm going to name this one capital O. I'm going to advance my timeline to where it's in. I'm going to hit the topic director again and click add stop. I'm going to name this stop point A. Now I'm ready to add the toggle group. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new group into my topic group. And let's call this one topic, since it's the exact same name as our director. I'm going to go ahead into my built-ins, into my plugins, into the container, grab the toggle, drag it onto my topic group, click on the toggle director and hit default keyframes, and it adds that animation. So if I want to create a call-up scene for this, I can. I'm just going to take a quick snapshot of this. So I'll take a snap and I'll call this one topic. And now I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go into my S tab and create a call-up scene. So create new scene. We're going to call this one topic. I'm going to go ahead and double click it to open it. First thing I'm going to do is grab my snapshot of that topic. I'm going to slide this into the background image. And again, I'm going to add a group here and also a font. So we'll just use the same font. I'm going to click on the transformation editor. I'm going to bring it forward 1 or 2. I'm going to go ahead into my text editor and say we want to put something here like happening now, 2 lines. We'll make the justification here center. If we want to adjust the leading here, we can. And we'll scale this down. Kind of position it over our topic box. And we'll go ahead and add a control text to this. So if we want to be able to change the text, we can. I want to slide my control text onto the font. The field identifier is fine. Description, again, we can leave it as is, or we can type in a name. So I'm just going to type in topic. It automatically added the control object here. So I'm going to click on the control object, turn on my transition logic. And again, our background scene is called master. Our state identifier was A, and our layer identifier was called topic. So before I save this, I'm going to go into the scene settings and turn our background off and change the scene setting here to blue, and I'm going to hit save. At this point, we made a couple of call-up scenes, so it'd probably be a good time to go into Trio and actually test how these scenes work. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to put our artist to on air and go into Trio. So once in Trio here, I'm going to navigate to my folder. I've already got my lower third scenes in here, so I'm going to need to add the additional scenes that we created. So we made the logo, the time, and the topic. And I'm just going to drag these into our playlist here. We don't ever need to import the master scene. So let's minimize this, bring up artist. We have Trio here. Now as I right click and do direct take on these, we should be bringing up each element. First time you run it locally, it may bring everything up, so we may need to go through and do a direct take out on everything. So this is what I'm going to do a direct take out on each one of these. And then I'm going to go back and rerun these. So everything is out now. Now I'm going to start with my first state, lower third. I'm going to do a direct take on that one. We'll go down to the logo and do a direct take on that one. So I do that. You can see it comes up. Here's the logo. If we want to try to run the time, we can bring this one up. We'll do a direct take on that one. There's the time. If we want to do the topic, I'm going to do a direct take on this one. Brings in the topic. Now you see what's happening with the happening now is that we have it set to single line. So we need to fix that as well. So as we run each one of these through a direct take out, it should take each one of these out. So let's try to switch our lower third here to the other state. Comes in, still looks good. We'll take our time out, we'll take our logo out, and we'll take our lower third out. Let's fix our topic. So we'll go back into the scene. We want to close our master scene. Let's go into the topic. The reason that it was coming up with one line is because in the control text parameter, we have our single line on. I'm going to turn that off, and I'm just going to resave this. We can jump back into Trio and test it again. So once in Trio, in my topic, I'm just going to select it, right click, and I'm going to click re-import. Now when we run this again, it should come up as 2 lines since we fixed it and no longer have the single line on. So if you want to go through each one of these and run it again and just see how it's working, you can. So each one looks like it's still functioning properly, and we can go from state to state on our lower third and have each element come in separately